The opposite, to be sameach on HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to these beinunus, the pondering the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, again, may be, it's not going to be be'emes lamita because this aveda belongs to the tzaddik per se. It's pertinent to the tzaddik, simchot tzaddikim b'Hashem, Hashenkin, the beinuni. It's not be'emes lamita because, again, he's more aligned with HaKadosh Baruch Hu when it comes to his garments, thought, speech, and action. His heart not necessarily, it stands in a constant elation with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and of joy, in a true, genuine simcha b'Hashem that belongs really to the tzaddik. But still, again, based on the fact that we said the beinoni can daven whenever he wants, he can lengthen, he can elaborate in his davening, and the davening is the kind of that arena which he has, that bonus which he has that he can enter. He doesn't have to, no one's telling him how long he could be in that bonus experience. He could go in and out whenever he wants. He could stay there, be ma'irich and davening. That's why the Kosher Eden, based on the Gemara, they used to daven a lot because they know that's a time when this is la la land for them. And in other words, this is something which is extremely. They utilized it because it was an extremely precious time for them, because that's when they have the ability to have a taste of the avodah of the tzaddik, or maybe on the surface similar to the tzaddik. So continue davening, or because davening is based, like we just said, it's predicated on these beinunus and the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So you can continue pondering the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. To some degree, you're not going to come to be'emes lamita because you're not the tzaddik, but try to find simcha in something which is valuable, something which is everlasting, something which is eternal, something which is going to bring you or elevate you and lift you to a level and a state of eternity, as opposed to dealing with things which are trivial and only going to lead to things which of nowhere. Like I say, even though it's not the true level of the beinoni. Is b'dimyanis means to say, it's just kind of, to a certain extent, it's an illusion in the life and the avodah of the beinoni. Afal pikein, nonetheless, when you try hu yases shalai, you'll do yours. You do yours. You try to find or get excited of God via pondering in the reality of God in a constant place. It's l'kaim zashvua, and do you have a basis for this? Excuse me. So, do you have a basis for this, that I should try to be the tzaddik? The answer is I do. And this Alter Rebbe began in the second part of chapter Yudalit. Can't forget that the same Eibishter, which is Mashbim, I say, the same mandate what the Yid has, Mashbim, they make the Neshama take the oath prior to its entry into Ilam Haza, Al Tehi Rasha. Do not be a Rasha, because again, this is the avodah of the beinoni, not to be the Rasha because he's always on the verge, because his heart has not been transformed. His heart is very much in tune with the animalistic drive. So therefore you have to tell the person, Al Tehi Rasha, don't allow that feeling, that signal to trespass into thought, speech, and action. And that is the avodah of the beinoni. The same Gemara tells us that they tell every single neshama tehi tzaddik. So in other words, there is a basis for the yid to try to be the tzaddik. In one hand, he's not the tzaddik, and he should not fool himself, and he should not try to live a life on the overall, or believe, or be convinced that he's a tzaddik because there's only confused things. Because I'm a tzaddik, I don't have any temptations to look, to hear, to think, to speak, to do anything which is not contrary to Ratzon Hashem. And I do feel I do have those temptations. It could just confuse the person, and it ultimately won't lead to anything good. Quite on the contrary. So he's not a tzaddik, he's a beinoni, and once you keep you acknowledge your position, it's so much easier to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Once a person acknowledges that, right, he can drive a car, he cannot drive a truck, he will jump into a truck and say, look, I can drive 4 wheels, let me just go, it's not going to end up good. You're confined, you have limitations, this is what you can do, so you're a beinoni. That's it. 100% you're a beinoni. That's the whole basis of the Alter Rebbe in the first 12 chapters, basically, or in other words, leading up to the 12th, 13th, 14th chapter. This is who you are, and stick to it, and that's the way you'll be able to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with joy and gladness of heart. But yet, the same Torah tells them to eat tzaddik. Some strive and drive. You should try to have to be a tzaddik. So based on that, you should do something l'kayim as a shvua to fulfill this swear. Try to get involved, to daven longer, or use the techniques of davening, which is again nisbein is pondering the greatness of Hashem, a little more frequent, somewhat, even though it's not be'emes lamite because it belongs to the tzaddik, simchat tzaddikim b'as Hashem. But you're trying to fulfill this shvua, and therefore you have a basis to try to climb this type of ladder. Try to jump into that track, and maybe because you're told that you have the ability. And Vashem Yasatebenu, when the Eibishter sees that you're trying and you're doing what you can in order to be excited, to find Simcha B'Hashem, the Eibishter is going to reciprocate. He's going to do the good in his eyes in order that maybe he would open a little window and allow you to experience a little bit of the experience of the tzaddik, the simcha of the tzaddik. That's one thing. Another thing, it says, just like a person could accustom himself to anything, it says, when one accustoms himself to anything, shilting, it becomes kind of, it becomes dominant, and it becomes second nature. A person cannot do certain things before he tries to do them. In other words, when you accustom yourself to do something, someone cannot walk on his hands anytime. The average person cannot walk on his hands. But if you accustom yourself time and again to do it, it can become a second nature. So this is Alter Rebbe introducing again this vart, which is again a very natural word, works with anything. Initially you can't, but if you accustom yourself, it becomes your second nature. It's not your first nature, but it becomes a second nature. Similarly, Alter Rebbe introduces this in the context of the Tehit Tzaddik notion in the world of the Beinoni. It doesn't belong to you, but if you accustom yourself to it, I believe this is also based on this Tehit Tzaddik. But the first thing, the Rebbe says, try it because there's a shvua, there's an oath that you took as well. Another thing is, try it because like anything else, which you cannot do initially, and if you accustom yourself to do it, it becomes your second nature. Try to accustom yourself to something which is not pertinent to you, it might become your second nature. And therefore, you accustom yourself to abhor the evil. It's not only not to accept the evil, but when you're accustomed yourself to abhor the evil, which is again aligned with Avodah Tzaddik, a little bit of evil. It doesn't say completely, because the Tzaddik is Seimei, the real Tzaddik, the quintessential Tzaddik. We know that in the world of Tzaddik also, there's multiple wills. There's tens of thousands of levels of Tzaddik, but think about the quintessential Tzaddik. Tzaddik doesn't just nimas ktsas, just a little bit abhorrent, disgusted with evil. Tzaddik has a total hatred to anything evil. When we say hatred is not to a person or not chas v'shalom, it's the idea to anything which is not aligned with Avodas Hashem, it's not aligned with Ratzon Hashem, that tzaddik is disgusted with it. But in this case, Alter Rebbe says, you're not the tzaddik, therefore, lemaizus ravi nimas ktsas be'emes, a little bit minimally to be abhorred with, truly, be'emes, with evil. When you'll accustom yourself to rejoice and to elate your soul in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, through pondering with the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So here, so again, the first thing Alter Rebbe introduced the idea, or in the second BAYT, he says that something could become a second nature, but here he goes back to Hashem's reciprocating, and when Hashem sees that you are arousing within yourself that notion of Simchut Tzadikim B'Hashem, through the Seder of the Tata, in other words, when the Sato and Elo means the low and then high. Low is us towards Hashem. It's just Leila, the Eibishter towards us. When he sees we're arousing, we're evoking within ourselves this notion of Simchut Tzadikim Hashem, trying to rejoice in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Lemai Sesara, to abhor the evil at least minimally. So Hashem, the Eibishter, arouses as well. It causes a heavenly arousal. That there's going to be aroused upon him a spirit from on high. The Yizken, he will merit from the spirit of the source, or a root rather, of some type of tzaddik, which will become nis'aber, which means pregnant within him to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, true simcha, but tzaddikim Hashem, like it says, tzaddikim rejoice in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What is the idea of pregnancy? Pregnancy is that it's not, the fetus is not the mother. Fetus, it's a separate entity. The hand, the limb of a person, even though you could watch it maneuver and move and so on, it's still ultimately part of you, right? The core of the person is his brain, his heart, his nerve system, or more the brain and so on. But eventually, there's limbs which extend from the brain and function different than the brain. They have a unique and separate function. You can see how they function and so on. A person writes in a certain way. You could appreciate himself. Every limb within the person is ultimately, even though they're an extension of the nerve system, the core of man's nefesh, but nonetheless, it's all part of the person. The fetus, as much as it feeds off the mother, and it grows within the mother, within the womb, but in the end of the day, it's meant to be a separate entity. That's why you use Lashon Ibor. It's not you, because you're not the tzaddik. But when the Eibishter sees that you're trying to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, similar to the tzaddik, not that you're convincing yourself you are the tzaddik and in a total manner you serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu totally as a tzaddik. No, that's going to confuse you. You're serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu as a Beinani. But you're trying to keep the oath, and they're trying to as well fulfill this, what they gave you, that oath. They made you swear that, take upon yourself that oath to hit tzaddik. So you're trying to be to hit tzaddik. So additional to the fact that it may become your second nature, but it's also based on this, the fact that to some degree it can belong to you, or it belongs to you. So Hashem sees that you are trying to emulate that avodah, that tzaddik, is to find joy in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not only to follow, to be aligned with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in thought, speech, and action, but to find your heart, you find joy within HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to ignite your heart towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu with simcha. So the Eibishter is going to do is, Hashem might take a spirit of a tzaddik, the root of some tzaddik, and with this aberbai, again, it's not you, but it's going to kind of impregnate within you that ruach, that spirit of a tzaddik. And the lashon is dafke ibur, because it's not you. We're still dealing with a beinani. And because of that, you'll have something to simcha b'tzedek Hashem. You find joy in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And v'tiskayim, and when Hashem will do that, v'tiskayim be'emes hashvua, then it won't be only just an illusion, because once the Eibishter, it's not only becomes a second nature, or not only because you're just doing yours. This is another idea that the Eibishter is truly going to reciprocate in a way that he's going to go to his echalos chambers, find the tzaddik, take the ruach, the spirit of the tzaddik, embedded within your system, invested in your system. So again, it's not you, but he connects it to you. As much as the fetus is not the mother, it still grows as very, very much part of the mother. So it has kind of this duality. It's not the mother, but on the other hand, it is part, and it grows with the mother. It's within the mother system. It's within the womb of the mother. Similarly, in here it's the Beinani, is not the tzaddik, but because it's nisaber by a particular ruach from the sheish of tzaddik, so it will be fulfilled be'emes, not in an illusionary manner, but the truth, a shvua, that oath, shemash beim, which they make him swear to eat tzaddik, be a tzaddik. I think we should go on a little bit. And the chapter 15, and Alter Rebbe introduces something, just a few more minutes, but the Alter Rebbe introduces something over here which is Tesvav, which is known to be a unique perek, that the Alter Rebbe shows us that within the Beinani themselves there's two levels within the Beinani. Within the Beinani itself, there's two levels within the Beinani. Apparently, when we divide the tzaddik and the Rasha and the Beinani and the different levels in tzaddikim, the Rebbe explains. But since the Beinani, apparently, he's doing what he's supposed to do, again, not on an emotional level, not an intellectual level. It's all about his thought, speech, and action. So apparently, the Beinani is kind of one type of person that we don't see. So we're dealing with heart. We could always understand that there are different levels, because heart is something much more internal part of the person. Just like physically, it's a vital organ. so too with a person in the expression of love and fear and so on. You can always find different levels, how much a person loves, how much a person fears and so on. You can dissect them into thousands, tens of thousands, like the Lashon. But by the BAYT it's about thought, speech, and action. So why would we think that there's different levels of the BAYT? But Alter Rebbe introduces over here a pasuk and shows us, in the end of the day, that the BAYT also has two levels. There's two levels within the BAYT. But prior to pointing that out, Alter Rebbe brings a pasuk which shows us again that the BAYT and the tzaddik are two separate phenomena, two separate avodas and two separate type of people. Where do we see it? With this is understood. We could say, "V'shavtem reisem bein tzaddik l'rasha bein eved alikim l'shalei avadei." That you should sit and see between, literally, that's what it means. Between the tzaddik, and examine the avodah between the tzaddik and the rasha, the righteous, and the rasha ben eved l'kim l'shalei avadei, like the one who serves HaKadosh Baruch Hu to someone who doesn't serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So apparently it seems redundant over here. Why? Because if you want to say someone is an Eved Elikim, he serves HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Who is that? The tzaddik. Take any 5-year-old. Who serves HaKadosh Baruch Hu? The tzaddik. Who's Lo Yavadei? Someone who doesn't serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The rasha. Any child, right? Something, the first spontaneous result. Who is the Eved Hashem? The tzaddik. Who's Lo Yavadei? Doesn't serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the rasha. So apparently it seems again redundant. Examine the difference of the tzaddik and the rasha to the Eved Elikim Shalei Avadei. But what Alter Rebbe says, based on what we said over here, and again, it doesn't make sense, it should be redundant. So Alter Rebbe says, based on what we said over here, now the pasuk reads so beautiful. The pasuk reads so beautiful over here. Because the tzaddik is not the Eved Elikim. The tzaddik is not the Eved Elikim. The tzaddik is more called like an Eved Hashem. He's like done. Done means to say he's transcendent over any taiva, any temptation, which is not aligned with Eved Hashem. In other words, he intellectualizes, he thinks, everything about him, the whole system is completely transformed to the service of God. His mind, his heart. Therefore, if you say his heart is transformed, he has no taiva, has no temptation which is not aligned with Ratzon Hashem. Not only he has a temptation and he doesn't enter into the thought, speech, and action. He has no temptation. So he's an Eved Hashem. He's already a done deal. He's a finished product. It can't be Eved Hashem. Eved means that I'm in the middle of the Avodah. The Eved Hashem, Eved Elikim, that's the Beinani, that he has challenges and nonetheless he overcomes the challenges. That's called an Eved. Tzaddik is more like an Eved Hashem. Eved means this is who he is. Eved means he's in the middle of the Avodah. So now we can see it's not redundant because the tzaddik is the tzaddik and Eved Elikim is not a tzaddik. The Eved Elikim is the Beinani. So now we can understand again. Sha'efesh ben Eved Elikim l'tzaddik sha'eved u'loshen heved. She'be'emtza Avodah isn't just the middle of the Avodah. She'amilchama, which is in the middle, as like someone said the other day. Somebody asked the other day, I forget who it was, of apparently the Beinani maybe to a certain extent maybe it could be greater than the tzaddik. Because the Beinani always is in a struggle. His mind and heart is always sending signals in the other direction, and he's always overcoming them. So he, as opposed to the tzaddik, he's completely transformed. Everything about him is a complete metamorphosis from beginning to end. So where is his service? So the answer we gave her, so the tzaddik till he became a tzaddik, he probably went through the rate of the Beinani as well, and also in the level of the tzaddik is always some type of struggle. The mere fact, a person finds himself in Elam Hazen, and there's tzaddikim which are dealing, especially communal tzaddikim, or tzaddikim which deal with their communities or their people. Their neshama klal is a neshama which he doesn't serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu individually, or his whole, or the structure of his avodah is not only a personal individual relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He carries the weight and the struggles of his people, like Moshe Rabbeinu. Right? It's a different type of a rebbe. Right? Gimel Tammuz, it's an idea of a rebbe. That's a different idea, and therefore there is always struggle in the great tzaddikim. They have a struggle regardless. Moshe Rabbeinu was a man which struggled through the 40 years in the desert, but not because of his own personal avodah, because he was a Moshe Rabbeinu who represented a whole generation. He took the faults, their troubles, and their bumps, and their aggravations, and so on. So the tzaddik also has, but in the overall is in his individual avodah. He's not an Eved. He's an Eved Hashem. He's like a done deal because he's completely transformed. Everything about him is aligned with the Ratzon Hashem. A Beinin is an Ovid. Because Ben's Aveda, he's in the middle of the Aveda. Means he 5 seconds later, after he overcame a certain taiva to think Chas v'Shalom, to entertain his mind with something that Hashem said no, and he overcame it 5 seconds later, 5 milliseconds later, it's coming back to him again. So that's why he's Ovid Elikim. B'emtza Aveda, Mecham Yitzhahara, which is the war. Fight with Yitzhahara, to strengthen himself over the Yitzhahara and to chase the Yitzhahara from the small city again, which is the person's body. That it should not invest in the limbs of the body. It's a service and it's a great toil to constantly war and constantly fight with the Nefesh Bahamis. And that's the Beinini, but that's not the Tzaddik. So the Tzaddik and the Eved Hashem is two distinct people, because the Tzaddik is not called Eved Hashem, the Tzaddik is called Eved Hashem. It's already a symbol, it's already a name, it's already a term. When you say someone's a Chacham, he is already intrinsically a Chacham. Or you say someone's a Melech, a king. It's not that he's trying to be a king, he is a king. He already became a king. A Melech or a Chacham, he became a Chacham or a Melech or a king. This Tzaddik, he's called an Eveshim. Avad, he served in the Gomar Legamri, he completed the Aveda Mechavim Marad, the war, the Aveda, rather, the service, the war with evil. He chased it completely away. His heart is completely devoid of anything negative. So that's why it's called Eved Hashem. So now we see from the pasuk again, so evidently and clearly, the Tzaddik and the Eved Elikim are two separate people. The Eved Elikim is the Beini, the Tzaddik is called Eved Hashem. Have a great night.